StraighTallDay.com.
How the disciplined person still loses. While I am a huge advocate of discipline, discipline is the foundational piece. When we talk about mindset being the foundation to work on your game, discipline is the foundation of the mindset. It is the starting point and the key element. Number one hallmark of the professional. Being disciplined can still lead to failure and disappointing outcomes if it is leveraged and utilized the wrong way. So whenever I'm asked, and that's what we're going to talk about here today, but whenever I am asked what internal personal trait matters the most when it comes to creating success, especially for success when it comes to my personal journey, the answer has always been the same: discipline. When it comes to most of the people who I have worked with, touched, spoken to, and helped over the years, it's some form of discipline in some aspect that plays the biggest role, because discipline is not about knowing the right thing to do or even doing the right thing. It's about systematizing, habituating, doing the right things that produce the desired outcomes and doing it consistently, even when you may not feel like doing it. Showing up every day to do the work, following standards and protocols and procedures, even when you don't really feel like following the standards, protocols, and procedures. Showing up consistently as you are supposed to, regardless of what is going on around you. Even with all of those things, with all of that said, there are still ways that people who are disciplined can come up short. Today I'm going to tell you what those ways are and make sure that you don't fall into these traps. So let's talk about this, how the disciplined person can still lose. Point number one, discipline still requires direction. You can't have discipline without direction. You need to be clear as to what your discipline is taking you towards. And this is why discipline is a byproduct of structure, and structure is a byproduct of principles. When your principles are clear in terms of what you're looking to achieve and where you want to go, your structures are designed around getting you there. So your clear principles say, okay, this is where we're going. This is the outcome that we're going to get. You create a structure that embodies those principles. Following the structure consistently leads to the disciplines. But if you find yourself going in a direction that you don't want to go, you got to work backwards and edit the structure, or you got to rethink your principles, or a combination of both. Discipline, however, just to be clear here, discipline is never at the top of the funnel, so to speak, in your work. Discipline is always governed by being clear on what the desired outcome is. So the way that the disciplined person can lose is if you are very disciplined in terms of what you are doing, but your discipline has no clear direction. In other words, you are not following a structure that is governed by principle. You don't know where exactly you're trying to go. You don't know what you're about, what you're standing on, what you are for, what you are against, what is absolutely mandated in your life and what is absolutely not allowed in your life. If you don't have answers for those things, then being disciplined could lead you even further away from where you might want to be, but you don't even know where you want to be because you don't have any clear principles to tell you where you want to be. This is how discipline alone, when it's not properly governed, is not properly covered by structure and principle, can still lead to failure. So just because a person is highly disciplined is not guaranteed that they're going to be successful. The way that I just broke that down and explained to you, you have to understand or ask yourself, what am I being disciplined towards? And I'm being disciplined because I'm following this structure, and I'm following this structure because everything is operating off of these principles. All right, those, you should be able to fill in those blanks. What is that for you? Point number two. Today's topic, once again, is how the disciplined person loses. Number two, consistency is not clarity. Those are two different things. Clarity is about knowing exactly where you want to go, how you want to get there, and what processes you will use to achieve this outcome. Being consistent without clarity often leads to burnout, frustration, and lots of used time that goes unaccounted for, also known as, many people call this, wasted time. When you are consistent but you're not clear, that means you could be consistently doing the wrong thing. Has any of you ever been in a situation where you were doing a thing, but you were going in the wrong direction with the thing that you were doing? So when you finally woke up or poked your head above water and realized that you were going in the wrong direction, you said, damn, I did all that work, but I was doing the work the wrong way, going in the wrong direction. Now you have to go back to where you were before just to undo the time that you just used doing the wrong thing. Then when you got clarity, you might have been able to get to a better outcome with less effort and even less time. So when you're consistent without clarity, you often get burned out. There are a lot of burned out entrepreneurs out there who are working really hard and are very consistent, showing up every day. But the problem is you're running on that treadmill. that proverbial treadmill. I found myself on the treadmill in the past, and that's when I knew I had to make changes. The treadmill is when everybody knows what a treadmill is. You're giving a whole lot of effort. There's a lot of sweat. There's a lot of time going by, and you are fatigued at the end of the workout, metaphorically speaking. But by the time you get off the treadmill, even though the treadmill says you ran 10 miles, you are still in the exact same spot you were when you first stepped onto the treadmill, if you're following this metaphor here. A treadmill is a fine thing to use for cardiovascular exercise if you're in the gym. A treadmill is not a thing you want to be on if you are working and trying to move a business or career forward. You need to actually be covering ground and getting from this point to that point and being able to look back and see, I was here, now I'm here. But if you find yourself on the treadmill being consistent, treadmill does require consistency, but there's no clarity. Where exactly are we going here? You got a problem. All right, so burnout is a big thing that happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, and high-level professionals just end up burned out in their businesses, especially service-based businesses that are all, actually it happens with service-based business and product-based businesses where you have some leverage, not leverage, but leeway and freedom as to how much work you want to do, how much work you're going to do, and especially when you have not put enough of the proper systems in place to remove yourself from the equation, such that the more volume your business is doing, the harder you have to work, i.e. the faster you have to run on the treadmill. When your business is set up in that way, that the more business you do, the faster you have to run, that leads to inevitable burnout because you have to keep working. And the better you do, the more you got to work. And that leads to the burnout. And what's the reason that a lot of people start businesses? Well, they want freedom. Freedom of time, freedom of decision, freedom of money. And when you set up a business that does not allow you to step away as the volume increases, when the volume increases, now you got to do more work. So the very money freedom that you wanted, you actually have it because you're making more money because you got more volume. The problem is the trade-off of you getting that more money is you got to give up more of your time. And as you give up more of your time, you start to burn out because money you can replace, time you cannot. Energy and presence, let's say, can't be replaced. When you miss Wednesday night's dinner, you can't go back and have Wednesday night dinner again on Thursday. And what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs is that they become victims of their own success simply because their structure is not properly designed such that more volume does not burn them out even further. So that's a big one you see with a lot of entrepreneurs is burnout and high-level professionals, just frustration because of the burnout. Lots of used time, again, going unaccounted for. One thing I help a lot of entrepreneurs and professionals with, and also team leaders, such as sales leaders, is clarity. What exactly do we want? How do we want to do it? What tools do we have at our disposal to get there? And what might be in our way right now as far as why are we not there yet? Why are we not there today? And what's the optimal method for us getting from here to there? See, these are all questions that I can help people answer once they realize that there's a problem. So with this clarity in place, answering these questions gives the clarity. When you have this clarity in place, then we can get consistent on a process that is driven towards creating clear outcomes. The problem that a lot of people have is that they are being consistent, but consistent towards an outcome that they can't even articulate where they're going, nor have they clearly defined where they're going. This usually leads to burnout at some point. That burnout usually occurs somewhere around it's not even so many necessarily about so many years in the business, but let's just say so many years in the business. Let's say around the 20 to 40, somewhere between the 20 and 40 year mark in business. You got to have been in business for a certain amount of time before burnout could possibly hit you, because your youth has to have gone away. So usually this is someone over the age of 50, sometimes over the age of 40 if they've been working since they first became a professional, usually over the age of 50, sometimes 40, and you've been in the same lane for a long time, but you don't have real clarity or real structure. You become the victim of your own success. That's usually a formula for burnout. And some of you have seen this before. Some of you have actually been this person who's burned out. If so, we can help you. Point number 3, today's topic once again is how the disciplined person still loses. Point number 3, discipline is not to be confused with effectiveness. Discipline and effectiveness are not the same thing. In the past, we've done episodes where I've talked about productivity and efficiency and effectiveness. And I've helped you understand the difference between all of these. In episode number 2161, I talked about effectiveness versus efficiency. And in episode number 2670, I talked about productivity and effectiveness and efficiency and how all three work together and the hierarchy of the three. They actually go from the bottom up. Productivity, efficiency is higher than that, and effectiveness is higher than both of them. Being productive means you are doing something and an outcome is being produced. That's what it means. You do something and produce an outcome, that's productivity. And that could be anything. You can produce any outcome. Efficiency is about getting things done while using as little resources as possible. Depending on what you're getting done, this can be a great thing. In other words, how do I get a whole lot of production done but do it in a fast amount of time? That's efficiency. Or how do I get a whole lot of production done while using as few people as possible? That's efficiency. Getting from this side of town to that side of town while using as little gas out of my gas tank as I can. That is efficiency. This is a good thing, depends on what you're doing. Effectiveness, however, is about getting important things done. See, productivity is about getting anything done. Effectiveness is about getting important things done. That's when you're effective. There's a big difference between being productive and being effective. A lot of people burn out because they are chasing productivity, not because they are chasing effectiveness. When you're chasing effectiveness, you usually don't get burned out because you're creating high leverage, high value results. You're not going to get burned out because the high leverage and high value from the results that you're producing free you from having to keep doing, which means you're not going to burn out. Usually you burn out when you're having to do so much and you have to run faster and faster on the treadmill. When you're being highly effective, you don't have to run faster on the treadmill. You can walk on the treadmill and get better results than running on it if you're being effective rather than being productive. When you get important things done, everything else that you want falls in line behind the things that have already been completed. So effectiveness is to discipline what precision is to repetition. I'll say that again, I'll explain it. Effectiveness is to discipline what precision is to repetition. See, doing something over and over and over again, also known as repetition, doesn't really mean that you're being effective at what you do. For example, when I worked at McDonald's, I was disciplined at the repetition of making cheeseburgers and putting French fries in the bag. I was very disciplined and I was good at the repetition. But was I really being effective? Was I really making a real impact for myself or for anyone else? The answer is no, I wasn't. As far as my $5.25 per hour job, was I being effective? Yes, I was doing what the job required of me to keep my job and get my paycheck. But in terms of where I wanted to go in my life, was my job at McDonald's effective towards getting me there? The answer was no. My job at McDonald's was treading water, i.e. treadmill. I was staying in the same spot, doing the thing, but not really getting anywhere. All right, that's what McDonald's was. This is the reason why they call places like that dead end jobs. It's a job and you do get paid and you may stay afloat, but is it actually taking you anywhere? No, it's a dead end. Or you're staring at a brick wall. All you can do is walk up to the wall, turn around, walk back, walk into the wall again. Effectiveness is about solving the right problems, not just solving any problem. You see, effectiveness is the discipline. Effectiveness means you can take your discipline of doing consistent things all the time, but when you focus on the effective thing to do, you may not have to be so disciplined for so long because you achieved the outcome already. So you don't have to burn out on discipline. So you can burn out on discipline if you're not using it the right way. And I said, this is as precision is to repetition. See, being repetitive means doing the same things over and over and over again, which is beneficial in certain places and in certain contexts. When you're being precise, on the other hand, you may only have to do something one time, and because it's done, you don't have to do it over and over and over again. It's already in place. You see, in your business, you could do the same things over and over and over again with every person who comes through your business, or you can create a system that is precise that replaces the personal repetition. The same things are going to be getting done, but they'll be getting done by the system rather than be getting done by the person. So you don't have to burn out and feel frustrated because you have to do all this work because the system now has replaced you from doing the work. The precision has replaced the repetition. The effectiveness has replaced the discipline. So understand that discipline, although I told you it is the foundational piece of the mindset, which is the foundation to work on your game, that doesn't mean that discipline is the starting point of what we do. No, discipline is a middle point after we're clear on our outcomes and our targets. That's the principles. And we're clear on what structure we want to put in place to make that happen. Then the discipline is simply a byproduct of number one and number two. Discipline is actually third in line. So understand the distinction between being effective and being disciplined. It can make a big difference in saving you a whole lot of time and a whole lot of effort and let's just call it heartbreak or mental frustration. Let's recap today's class, which is how the disciplined person still loses. Again, I just told you the value of discipline here, so I'll have to recap that again immediately. Let's get into the points. Number one, discipline still requires direction. If you wake up early, work hard, and you're fully focused, but you're doing all the wrong stuff with the wrong strategy, discipline can actually hurt you because discipline has to be directed somewhere. Discipline is never in the steering wheel. Discipline is a tool that is used when the other proper steps in the chain of command have already been completed. Point number 2, consistency does not mean clarity. Clarity is about knowing exactly where you want to go, how you want to get there, and what processes you'll use. If you're consistent without clarity, you can work really hard and be in the wrong place. And point number 3, discipline is not the same as effectiveness. Effectiveness is about doing things that matter. Discipline is about doing things over and over consistently without variance. But what things are you doing and why are you doing them and where are they leading? You need to ask those questions before you start being disciplined so you make sure that your discipline leads to effectiveness. They are not always necessarily the same thing. Inside of Work on Your Game University, I will show you how to get, first of all, I'm going to get you into the proper mindset that you get into, not only get into, but stay in when it comes to the way that you approach your work, yourself, and your life. And how do we turn that into the proper strategy? That's the game plan, the plan of action to get from point A to point Z. Then how do we systematize that so you can get from point A to point Z over and over and over again on call by design, and it's happening all the time, and you don't necessarily have to do it all yourself because the system is in place. All of that happens inside of workonyourgameuniversity.com. Again, that's workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all